Hello and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm Jason Paul. If you're new to the podcast, a big welcome to you. And if you're returning, welcome back to the Soul Sync family. Today, it's just you and me on this episode because I'm going to take you on a deep dive into a topic that's not just been a part of my journey, but honestly has become a guiding force in my life. And that is the law of attraction. Now picture this, a young ambitious lad washing dishes at 16, barely a GCSE to his name, living in a deprived part of London. That was me. But in the midst of the suds and soapy water, I had a dream of soaring through the skies, working as cabin crew for Virgin Atlantic. Little did I know at that time, I was unknowingly dabbling in the magic of the law of attraction. Now fast forward to my 18th birthday, fresh from a family holiday to Orlando, the seed of desire firmly planted. I wanted to wear that Virgin Atlantic uniform, live my best life and travel the world. Now I used the power of visualization and the universe literally heard. I applied for the job with all my heart and soul and got it. As I navigated my way through Heathrow, flying all over the world, it wasn't just a daydream, it was a force I was tapping into without even knowing. But life took a massive turn. I left Virgin, joined the Metropolitan Police Force, and I faced abuse, bullying, and found myself literally at rock bottom. That's when the secret resurfaced in my life. Desperate for change, I religiously practiced the law of attraction, manifesting a journey from despair to building a multi-million-pound company. Now, it's quite the story, and today I'm going to share some of the twists and turns, the battles with self-confidence, substance abuse, and the near collapse of everything. We'll explore the power of self-limiting beliefs and the importance of gratitude. So get ready to join me on this journey as we go through some of the highs and lows of my life and the law of attraction. Enjoy. Now, thank you for joining me on this law of attraction episode. So I'm going to talk about all aspects of the law of attraction and some of the big bits of advice I can give you on your journey, and also some of the big things that I think trip us up when we're trying to manifest. I know this because I still at times struggle to manifest some things myself. Sometimes it can come down to a self-limiting belief or something that I just need to work on as a person. So you might be very new to the law of attraction. This might even be the first you've ever heard of it on this episode, but that's absolutely fine. You might have perhaps just read the book The Secret, you might have watched a movie, you might be a seasoned manifester, or maybe you're just curious. But the good thing is, through this episode, I'm going to talk about all aspects of the law of attraction, and I will give you my top tips on how I think it can help you. But I want to tell you about my backstory, because the law of attraction really is woven into my backstory. And I think by telling you the story, it will allow you to kind of see how I've managed to use the law of attraction myself. I think when a lot of other podcasts that I've listened to have talked about the law of attraction, sometimes I think it's very much glamorized. And I think it's very important to really show some of the not so good bits, to show how the law of attraction was used against that and for the purposes of good. So I give you the kind of warning now. I'm going to go into all kind of aspects and lots of twists and turns of my journey here, but I hope that you find this really useful. Now, just before we go into my backstory, first of all, what is the law of attraction? Now, the law of attraction, it's not some mystical concept. It's a powerful force that shapes our lives in ways we might not always realise. At its core, the law of attraction is like a cosmic magnet, pulling into our lives whatever we consistently think about and focus on. In simpler terms, it's the idea that like attracts like. Positive thoughts attract positive experiences, while negative thoughts attract, well, you've guessed it, the not so great stuff. Think of it as like ordering from the cosmic menu. If you're sending out vibes of success, abundance, and positivity, the universe takes note and starts delivering those things right to your doorstep. On the flip side, if you're stuck in a negative thought loop, guess what? The universe might serve up a dish that you'd rather not have. Now, the law of attraction isn't just a one-time thing. It is a constant dance. It's about maintaining a positive mindset and being intentional about what you'd want to attract into your life. It's not about wishful thinking alone. It's about aligning your thoughts, feelings, and your actions with your desires. So here's the deal, whether you're seeking love, success, or just a better vibe in your life, the law of attraction is like your cosmic ally. It's not about magically wishing things into existence. It's about consciously creating the energy you want to attract. So how did I first come across the law of attraction? So as I mentioned a bit in the show intro, I grew up in West London. I grew up with my mum, and my mum had me from a very young age when she was 18 years old. And I went to a school. I didn't realise it at the time. I actually only realised it really recently. I went to one of the bottom 3 secondary schools in the country, and it was in a BBC interview that I did recently that I come to realise that. The researcher pulled it out, and I said, wow, the school was bad, but I didn't realise it was in the bottom 3 schools. So my experience of schooling wasn't great. I didn't have a great time in school. I was bullied a lot. And I went to an all-boys school, and I was bullied a lot for being gay. At the time, I didn't even know if I really was gay, but I think that's probably what made it harder for me in my later teenage years to fully accept that, because there was a lot of trauma there from that period of my life. Anyway, when I left school, my first job was washing up dishes in a restaurant, and I did that at 16 years old in a Frankie and Benny's restaurant. Anyone who knows what Frankie and Benny's is in the England, of course. And it was around the time when I was 18 years old. So when I first came across the law of attraction, I think I was practicing it before I even consciously knew what it was. So I'd been quite into performing magic alongside working in this restaurant washing up dishes. So at the weekends, I would perform magic, and I used to really enjoy that. And then during the week, I'd wash up dishes in the restaurant. However, I'd been about 18 years old, just about to turn 18 years old. I'd been on a family holiday to Orlando, and I'd flown on the airline Virgin Atlantic, and I looked at those cabin crew and I thought, wow, I want to do that job. I want to fly all over the world. So one of the first things I did when I got back was I went onto their website and saw that you had to be 18 years old to work at Virgin Atlantic. And I was just about to turn 18, so you guessed it, on my 18th birthday, I started filling out the application form. It must have taken me hours and hours and hours, and I must have got my mum to read it back again and again and again. And then I sent the application off, and I would literally daydream about travelling around the world wearing the uniform. Like, those crew looked like they were living their best life, and I absolutely wanted it. So I literally put my heart and soul into it, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. The day then came that a letter arrived, and I'd been invited to an interview. So I went for the interview. I was super nervous. I ended up getting to the interview in a trading estate. It must have been 2 hours early, walking around, pacing around. But the whole time I was literally daydreaming about getting that job. When I arrived at the interview in the room, there was about 30 people, and I was by far the youngest. As they went round the room, everyone introducing themselves, I remember sitting there thinking, this is crazy. Everyone else has had lots of jobs, and then they get to me and I say, what they said to me, what do you do? And I said, well, I wash up dishes but perform magic. Anyway, throughout the course of the morning, the group got smaller and smaller as people were whittled down, and it got down to 2 of us, and me and this lovely lady, Michelle. And then the ladies invited us in for the proper full interview, and they said to me, what is it that you do? And I talked through my passion for magic, and they asked if they could see a trick. Now, believe it or not, I wasn't actually super prepared at bringing something, but I did have a pack of cards in my pocket, and I performed a trick. They seemed to really like it, and then that was it. Away we went, and we were told that we would hear back within 2 weeks in writing. Now, during that time, to say I must have been visualising myself in that Virgin uniform is an understatement. It was all I could think about. Now, I know now, looking back at this, I manifested that by so strongly believing, by so strongly feeling. I didn't just imagine myself. I would feel the emotions and the feelings of elevation and joy of me wearing that uniform. So the day came that the letter arrived. I opened it, and that was the start of my adventure working for Virgin Atlantic. So to fast forward a few months on, I'd done my training at Virgin, and I was on a flight to New York. And we used to get a little bit of a break sometimes on the plane, believe it or not. It was really busy, so there'd be a few of us crew serving up a few hundred passengers. And there was a cabin crew member that I just met, because before every flight you'd fly with a different set of crew. There were thousands of different crew members, and a lady was reading a book, and it looked really interesting. It looked like quite an old book, but it was still quite a modern book in a way, if that makes sense. And I asked her what it was, and she said, "But this is the secret. It's about how to effectively get anything you want in life." She explained the basic concept to me, and I was really interested, wrote the name of it down, and when I landed into New York and I went shopping, I picked up a copy of the book. And I remember now distinctly back then sitting in the bath and reading this book. And I probably did practice it then for a good few weeks. But I was a young guy living my best life. I read it and then I kind of put it down and forgot about it. Now, this is when the story starts going a bit south and a bit sour. So let's talk about the next chapter. So I must have been about 2.5 years into working for Virgin Atlantic when I decided that I was going to become a police officer. Basically, the Metropolitan Police at the time were recruiting for the Olympics, and I thought to myself, I do need to get a proper job at some point. Also, as much as I love flying all around the world, it was starting to take an impact on me with jet lag. I've always been, since about 10 years old, I've been diabetic. And honestly, the time differences and trying to get insulin at the right time. Back then, it wasn't these sophisticated pumps that we have now. It was making sure that you do certain types of insulin at certain times of the day. So it just wasn't working for me, flying around the world constantly every single week. So I applied to the Metropolitan Police, and to cut a bit of a long story short there, I got the job. And I then proceeded to start my 6 months training at the Metropolitan Police's training centre. And after the 6 months training, I was posted out to Borough as a response PC. So my job was to answer 999 calls. Pretty early on into my time working as a police officer, I started to have a really bad time in the police. And that was mainly because one of the sergeants I worked for started to effectively make my life very difficult, which I think all stemmed from the fact, ultimately, that I was gay. And I think the difficult thing about that situation was I'd kind of learned at Virgin to really embrace my sexuality, and Virgin was so encouraging about that kind of thing. Honestly, if you was a straight or heterosexual man, you was in the minority at Virgin. You were the odd one out. And so it's around this sort of time as well that I started to get into a relationship. And let me explain a bit about that. So I originally met a chap, we'll call him Daniel, and we met online. And everything was going really well at the start. And this was around the time that I just started in the police, sort of being out there as an actual police officer, policing the streets of London. And when we first met online, he told me that he was 19 years old. I was about 22, maybe coming on 23. A few weeks into the relationship, everything was going well, but it became apparent that actually he was 17 rather than 19. And then me being young and naive, completely understood the reasons why I'd done it. I think the reasons were because he felt that he was more mature or whatever that might have been. So we very quickly, and obviously this is the benefit of hindsight, moved in together. I just bought a flat or an apartment in London, and it literally stretched me beyond belief. It left me with absolutely barely any money at all at the end of the month. And it was but he moved in, and at the time we was obviously having a good time in the relationship, and obviously I thought it would help with bills as well. So it all seemed to make sense, seemed to make perfect sense. So as the months progressed, the bullying in the police got worse and worse and worse. And it started off as light sort of remarks about my dress, and it then started to really take a whole new dimension, whereby I was actually really scared of the sergeant that I worked for. And at that time, I saw things in the police as well that I just wasn't comfortable with, things that I felt some of the actions of this sergeant were not in line with the law and not what you would expect from a police officer. And I also started to notice there was an undercurrent in the police of discrimination. If a victim of crime didn't speak English, the way that it'd be dealt with just wasn't right. And what I started to feel was the reasons why I joined the police was ultimately to help people. And I was really passionate about that. And when you start to see things inside of the police that don't align with what they're meant to be protecting, it was very difficult. So I remember one distinct evening when I was a police officer, when me and the sergeant got paired out together on patrol, because the sergeant would choose the postings for the evening, and I used to dread when we'd sit in the parade room, and at the start of a shift we'd get told what our assignment was for the night, so who you were paired with. And I used to always think, please don't put us together, because I knew it would just be the night shift of hell. Anyway, in the early hours of the morning of that night shift, the sergeant proceeded to tell me, and this is, I think, quite a pivotal point of the story really, that as a police officer, if you need to report a crime, you report it directly to him, because he's your line manager, and if there's crime, you report it to a line manager. But he did say there was a caveat. If it was an emergency, then obviously you could dial 999. Now, looking back, that's an absolute load of rubbish. That was never the case, but it was used to coercively control me. What happened with this sergeant then was he went on to sexually assault me on 3 different occasions. Once was at a Christmas party, and 2 times were in a police vehicle when we was posted out on patrol together. Now, whilst this was going on, things at home were far from rosy. The relationship with Daniel had started to turn very, very sour. It started off with him checking my phone, and that then progressed to him just being very coercively controlling over me, to the point where I was actually really scared of him, because he was really irrational, and I felt I'd got myself into an awful situation. I was suffering quite simply from domestic abuse at home from Daniel, and there'd be times where he would lie on the bonnet of my car to prevent me from going to work, or would say, I'm going to turn up at the police station and tell your sergeant that you've hit me. And it was awful. I confided in my mum and said, look, this is happening and I need to get out of this relationship. So she said, what we'll do is we'll call his parents and get them to come down. So they turned up one evening, and they could see he'd locked himself in the bathroom, and it was a right scene. And we pleaded with them to take him back, because I couldn't go on living like this, and it was creating so much fear. So they didn't take him back, and what I felt at the time was there was almost an undercurrent that they didn't really care that much. So what I probably should have done in hindsight, well, I should have definitely done in hindsight, was reported this to the police. But the reason I couldn't report it to the police was because I was told that the only person I could report it to was the line manager, and there was no way in the world I was going to mention it to this particular sergeant. So I would go to work with the fear of God in the police of what would happen next in regards to this sergeant, but then I would come home to the abuse from Daniel, and I was really in a low place. So it got to a point a few months later where I did finally manage to break up with Daniel. And I initially thought that obviously he would move immediately back to the area where he was from, which was quite far from where I actually lived. It was a good 1.5 hour drive. However, he didn't move back to the area where he grew up. He decided to find a room share literally a 5-minute walk from where I was living. So even though we weren't in a relationship and he wasn't out of my life, I was really scared of what he was going to do. He would call me all the time, demand to see me, even if we weren't in a relationship. And one of the police officers I was working with, who was a friend of mine, she was a lovely female police officer, she could see how stressed I was, and she said to me, Jason, come on holiday, let's go to Spain for a few days. And We arrived at Gatwick Airport, and my phone was ringing constantly from him, demanding to speak to me. He'd got wind that I was going away. And when we arrived in Spain, silence, complete silence. He didn't contact me. And that in itself was unnerving me more than the constant bombardment of calls, because I couldn't wrap my head around why he suddenly went silent. Anyway, I had a few days in Spain and I got back, and about a week and a half, 2 weeks after I got back, and I didn't hear from him this whole period of being back from a week and a half. It was literally silence, which was unnerving me. But after about a week, I started to ease into it and thought to myself, okay, maybe he is getting over this. Maybe he is moving on. And I started to relax a bit more. All the while longer, I was still having the issues at work, but at least I could come back to some level of solitude at my house. I was due to get my certificate in the police, which is when you pass your probation period, which isn't easy. You have to demonstrate a lot of different attributes, and you have to go through a whole load of evidence you have to demonstrate in order to pass your probation. So it's quite a prestigious moment. So you get invited to meet the head of the borough, the top police officer in your borough, and you wear your tunic, which is the really smart police officer outfit, and you polish your shoes, and it's a big thing that you go over there. So I was due to go over there with another police officer who was in my team, who we'd done a lot of the training together. So I had my best shoes on, I had my tunic on, and I was all ready to go over to the police station. So we get there, and she gets led in to meet the borough commander first, and then I was going to be second. I then get called and jump up, ready to go meet the borough commander. And as I walk into the room that I'm led into, the first thing I notice is the borough commander isn't in the room. Actually, the person in the room is a senior chief inspector. And he says to me in a very sullen voice, "Jason, I need you to sit down." Straight away, my heart starts beating a million miles an hour. Because I believed I was being led in to get this moment that I've been working to for 2 years to get my certificate. And he says to me, "Jason, there's been allegations made against you." And he explained that my ex-partner had made allegations that I had committed a crime of theft. He alleged that I'd given him an ID card for the purposes of getting into bars. Now, I knew absolutely nothing about this. Immediately, I started breaking down into tears. And the chief inspector then went on to say to me that you're going to be suspended from this moment on full pay, but you're going to be suspended. And honestly, I must have been in the room 45 minutes. Tears. I just couldn't believe what he'd done to me. The threats he'd made to me, he'd followed through on, and my world was just falling apart. So I ended up going home and probably crying for the whole evening. And then the day started to unfold, where I was just absolutely, every day that went by, fearing about what was going to happen. So about 2 weeks later, I had a friend of mine stay over, and we were both sleeping in the same bed together. And it got to 4 a.m, and there was an almighty thud at the door, and it really made me jump. I absolutely jumped out of bed, and the thudding continued, and I was literally really scared, thinking, what on earth? And I opened the door, and there's a few police officers there who proceed to tell me that I'm now going to be arrested for the allegation of this theft that had been made. And because initially I was suspended, I was now arrested, and my poor friend at the time was wondering what on earth was going on. And the police officers told them to leave. My apartment would then proceeded to be searched, and I was taken to a police station, again in an absolute flood of tears. and I suddenly found myself on the inside of a custody cell, and I was traumatized. So I got interviewed about it. I explained everything that I could to the police, and then I was told that I was being bailed to return. Now, this period went on with me being on bail for a very long time. I didn't know what to do with every day because, in actual fact, I didn't have much free money at all. I barely could make ends meet when I was working. So being off every day was really, really difficult for me. I also started to become really paranoid that I was being followed. And I started to believe that basically the police were out to get me because of the fact that I tried to raise some allegations about the sergeant back then. I very much felt, and I still feel to this day, that the police were using this criminal case as leverage to try and discredit me in a civil case I was trying to raise for bullying with two other female police officers. So every time I went back for bail, I was told that I was being re-bailed. And what I decided to do, because I was becoming increasingly paranoid about officers following me, and also the fact that I could potentially bump into Daniel at any time because he was only living down the road, I decided one evening to get my mum to move into the apartment, which she very reluctantly agreed to because she saw it as my home. And I told her that I was packing up my bags and I was going to secretly move to Manchester, which, for people that don't know Manchester, it's right up north in the country. So one night, about 1 a.m. in the morning, I make the journey up to Manchester and I move into a house share. So for all intensive purposes, I still let the police believe that I was in London, but I would, every time I had a bail appointment, I would get the train down to London to attend it. So I moved into a house share in Manchester, and no one knew anything about the fact that I was a police officer, and no one knew about my situation. And I sort of invented a bit of a different story, and actually I started to make some friends up there, and I started to almost build a sort of crazy life where, don't get me wrong, every single day I had extreme anxiety, but the fact that I was kind of living this other life, it was actually probably a distraction that I needed, because at least in the times that I was around other people, I wasn't having to necessarily live the reality that I was going through. So it got to a point where the police made a decision about my whether or not to charge me, and they made the Crown Prosecution Service, really, rather than the police, but it was decided they would charge me. So I went to Magistrates Court, and because theft is an either way offence, meaning it can be either heard in a Crown Court or a Magistrates Court in England, I took one look at the judge in front of me on the initial hearing, and I just got the worst vibe that he was. I just felt basically he was a dinosaur, and he didn't really seem to. I also felt there was a slight bit of homophobia with him, so I decided to have the trial at a Crown Court. Now, it's a very risky decision, because if you decide to get the case heard at Crown Courts can impose a much more serious sentence. And what I'd been told about was they like to make an example out of police officers anyway. So I had to make this decision. Do I want my future to be decided by one individual, a magistrate, or do I want to have a cross-section of society and have my case heard at a Crown Court? So months went on, and every time there was a couple of occasions where I was called up on the Friday when I was in Manchester and told that the case would be heard on the Monday, which obviously wasn't ideal. But on two occasions I was told that actually Daniel was now living in Spain himself and he wasn't willing to come back. So on the third occasion, I was called on a Friday, told that it would be heard on a Monday, and I immediately came back down to London. Now, the trial was listed for 5 days over this alleged theft. And I came back, and as soon as because I went to the court with my mum every day, the first day of walking into the court, I'm absolutely hounded by photographers who are there to take my picture, and things just keep getting worse and worse. I went through the trial, and the most difficult thing about a trial is I was sitting in the dock with a security guard next to me, and I could see because what happens in a trial is the prosecution puts their case first forward. So the prosecution will lay out the case, they'll bring all their witnesses on. So for the first 3 days of the trial, I didn't even have the ability to say anything. All I had was the case against me, and every single time someone would say something in the court or a witness would go up, I could see the jury constantly looking at me, and it's an awful feeling, a really, really awful feeling. And I do want to say at this point, false allegations against people is something that I really want to pursue, because it has the impact to totally ruins people's life. And I think there's a massive problem at the moment in this country about false allegations, and the police not pursuing people for perverting the course of justice. But anyway, that's a conversation for perhaps another time or a different podcast. So his witnesses were himself and, much to my surprise, his dad. And his dad gave a story which was completely false to paint me in the worst light, which I couldn't believe myself, because his dad had known what was going on, because he'd even come and seen it himself. So we got to the point where I gave my evidence. I had my mum come up there, bless her, in the witness stand. And then we got to the point where the jury were there to make their verdict. And the jury went out, and they were out for the minimum amount of time, actually. I think it was, I can't remember exactly, but it was an hour. But I can assure you that hour to me felt like days, just sitting there waiting. And I said to my mum, do you want to come in? And she just couldn't bring herself to go in. So me and a friend went in to get the verdict. She just couldn't bring herself to go in there, which is totally understandable. The foreman of the jury stood up and delivered a unanimously not guilty verdict, which honestly, it was such a relief. Such a relief. I'd had 18 to 24 months of this hell. So we went for a drink, which I can assure you wasn't a celebration. It was more it was pure relief than anything. I was scared that I was going to go to prison for something I hadn't done. So we went for a drink. No sooner after being at the pub for maybe half an hour, my phone rings, and it's the chief inspector again, and he said, Jason, we've heard the result of the court case. We now require you to be back at work Monday, which I couldn't believe. No question as to how I was, no question as to the fact I'd been through this. They wanted me back. It was Friday, about 6 o'clock when we was in the pub, and they wanted me back Monday morning. So I had to drive straight back to Manchester, pack all of my belongings up that were up there, and then race back down to London to attend the police station. So when I got back for the first day, they told me that I was going to be on restricted duties, because what the police then intended to do was to use all of the criminal trial evidence, which, even though I was found not guilty, they were going to use it against me, potentially in a misconduct hearing. So my job every day was being sat in a room all alone, ringing up victims of crime to ask them about their opinion of the Met Police, which, as I'm sure you could appreciate, that was probably the worst place to put me in. And it was really lonely every single day being in a room. This went on for another period of months, and eventually I checked into a medical facility for stress for a week's treatment. And when I was there 3 days into it, which the police did know about, they called me up to say, look, you're going to now go to a misconduct hearing, and you've got 30 days until the hearing, which essentially gave me 1 day to resign, because if I didn't resign after what am I trying to get at? If I didn't resign after that period, then I would still be employed at the point of the misconduct hearing. So my advice at the time was, don't resign, because we don't think you're going to lose your job. But in actual fact, the reason I resigned was because I just the thing I was really struggling with as well was, even if I was to get found to keep my job and go back to my normal duties, that would have placed me back with the sergeants. So against the advice, I decided to resign, but that left me with a big issue. I need to find another job, and the problem I had was, every time I applied for a job, I just knew that there would be a big problem when it came to the part of getting a reference. So this is when the next chapter of the story comes in, and you will start to find out a bit about how I used and rediscovered the law of attraction. So eventually I came to the conclusion that what I needed to do was I needed to move back to Manchester. I'd started to really fall in love with Manchester, but I'm not sure, did I fall more in love with the place or the fact that I'd made some friends up there that sort of totally didn't know about all the ins and the outs of what was going on in my previous life. So I decided to apply for recruitment consultant roles. Now, the roles that were advertised were all at entry-level positions, which were on about £18,000, which was effectively about minimum wage back then. And it was difficult because I'd gone from a salary where I'd earn a lot more than that, and I'd bought a flat, and even finances were tight then. And my mum was still living in that apartment, and there was absolutely no way in the world that I wasn't going to meet my mortgage commitments, because that would have put my mum homeless. So I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had mortgage commitments that I needed to pay, and I needed to find a job quickly. And when I say quickly, I mean really quickly. So I got a job at a recruitment agency, and I'd managed to get a point of contact in the police to do me a character reference. He was one of the people that supported me through the trial. So I started at this recruitment agency, and my average day was, I'd get into work at 7:30 in the morning. I'd finish at about 6:30 at night. Then as the evening came, I started doing spray tans from when I finished work at the recruitment agency to about 10:30 at night. I'd started doing a cash in hand mobile spray tanning, which is a whole nother story in itself. So I was effectively working from the crack of dawn right up until about 11 o'clock at night doing these spray tans, just to try and make ends meet. And even then, at that point, I was still coming in on a shortfall every month, so I was getting into more and more debt. Then I knew that I needed to make money, and it was around that time that the law of attraction just came back into my mind. I'd totally forgotten about it in amongst all of the trauma that I'd gone through, and I picked it back up and I read the book The Secret, and I really started to practice it, that I was going to become the best recruitment consultant. I didn't just think it, I knew that I needed to feel it. Now, feeling it is very important, and it's something I'm going to talk about at the end of this episode. I didn't just have in my mind that I wanted to achieve this. I really got into my mind and felt that I was going to be successful. Now, a lot of these feelings were the feeling, the belief, and the feeling that I was going to do whatever it took to absolutely get there. Although it was coming from a place of fear and, worry, because I needed to make it, I really did feel that I was going to do whatever needed to be done to make this, because at the end of the day, I had to make sure that my mum was okay, and I had to make sure that I was okay. So about 3 months into my recruitment journey, I started to make money, and it literally took off very quickly. I kept in these very good habits of making sure that I was trying to look after myself the best I could, making sure that I would visualize myself in the place that I wanted to be. I would feel the feelings of gratitude for every single deal that came in. And gratitude is a massive part of the law of attraction. And at this juncture of the story, I just want to stop to say that one of the most important things is feeling grateful for what you already have before more can actually materialise. And what most people don't seem to realise about the law of attraction is, in order to actually receive, you need to first of all be grateful for what you've got. And that can be really difficult, actually. If you're in a negative place in your life, if you've in a set of negative circumstances, which by me sharing this story, I wanted to highlight to you For at that time in my life, I was in a really bad place. I'd got a lot of trauma that had happened to me, and it could have been very easy to think negative, but I had to really sort of get hold of my thoughts. And actually, one book that I read at the time, which I do think really helped, was The Chimp Paradox. And The Chimp Paradox talks about kind of the monkey on your shoulder, and it basically talks about the primitive brain and the sort of intelligent part of the brain, and how the primitive part of the brain is much larger and can control your thoughts. It's a really good book to read, but I'm going to save delving into sort of working with your mind more in another episode. So to carry on with the story, I ended up making a lot of money over a period of a year. It still wasn't necessarily plain sailing, though. My ex-partner went on to harass me for years by sending anonymous letters to my employers, which was just absolutely awful. So to move the story along, I worked for a couple of recruitment agencies, and then I started my own business. And very much at that time, I was still, when I started the business, I was using the law of attraction. I had to, it was a big risk starting the business. I'm not going to make any illusions otherwise, but I really believed, and the law of attraction at that point, it's almost become a part of me, the way that I would think. And I'm not going to say it was always easy at times, but when it came to my career, I was very, very good at believing in myself, seeing where I wanted to go, and feeling the feelings of gratitude for what I had at that time, but also feelings of gratitude for what was coming. I started my own business and it grew pretty quickly, but I fell into a bit of a pitfall a couple of years on into the business, because I think I'd just been running since the point of leaving the police, and I'd never really stopped to address any of that trauma that I went through. And I ended up becoming quite addicted to cannabis, and I think that it was because it was a way to chill me out and whatnot, and that led to a whole raft of problems. I ended up also suffering from psychosis once I started my business, which was absolutely awful. Lots of people don't know necessarily what psychosis is, and it's actually quite difficult to explain, but basically reality was somewhat distorted, and it's just a really, really scary experience, and it took me many years to recover from that. And whilst most people normally take a period of time off after psychosis, I literally pretty much worked. I had 1 week off, and then I carried on working again, and I made a whole raft of really bad business decisions off the back of it. What happened further along in the story was my business then started to do really badly and got to the point of nearly going bankrupt, because what I'd actually done was replaced gratitude for worry, because the business had got bigger. I was struggling to control it. I'd never ran a business before, and actually by replacing gratitude for worry, what actually happened was the business started doing really badly. And then I kind of lost touch with the law of attraction, went on this absolute downward spiral where everything I'd built up was hanging in the balance. And again, then I rediscovered the law of attraction and managed to swing the pendulum back the other way. Now, I have struggled to explain this story because there's still so much to it. I've given you literally a whistle-stop tour, and in future episodes we'll go into more detail about different facets of my story, which I feel can help you. But what I was trying to get across in this story was the essence of how, if you're grateful for what you've got, no matter what the circumstances might be, and if your life is not in a great place at the moment, it can be really, really difficult to look for things to be grateful for. So moving this along to my advice with the law of attraction, the first step to manifesting the life that you want is to be grateful for what you've got. Now, you might, like I said before, you might be in negative circumstances, you might not have the best life at the moment, but there is always aspects of your life you can be grateful for, whether it's your health, whether it's food on the table, whether it's the fact you've got a job and income. But I firmly believe if you're not grateful for what you've already got, you will not manifest more into your life. Now, one thing that really helped me, and I know that I've mentioned The Secret earlier on in this episode, And The Secret is obviously the really well publicised book that really talks about the law of attraction. One thing that I struggle with The Secret, and is I would do The Secret and then I would forget about it. I would remember it, the elements of it, but I would end up forgetting it. And one thing that really helped me was a book called The Magic. And the book called The Magic is basically the sequel to The Law of Attraction. It's again by Rhonda Byrne. And The Magic is a 28-day course where every day you have to do an activity. Now, I really liked this book, and I liked it for a number of reasons. One, because I think it's manageable, and the essence of the book is it starts off by giving you the first 2 days. The first activity you do is you wake up every morning and you write down 10 things you are grateful for. Now, I must admit, I find 10 a bit too many, because I tend to find when I've got 10, I don't feel as grateful for every single one of them as much as I do if I've just put down 5. So I think it's important to say with this book that you can sort of adapt it to you, and if you feel that a certain exercise might work slightly in a better way, don't feel that you have to stick to it absolutely to the letter. And the second day's activity in the book, which I still do to this day, is it's called the Gratitude Rock. And I have a rock I actually have a crystal by my bed. And every night before I go to bed, I hold this crystal and I try to think and be grateful for the best thing that's happened to me on that particular day. Now, by virtue of the fact that you're kind of going through all the good things that have happened in your day, you're exuding gratitude, not just for the best thing, but for lots of things when you're trying to identify that main thing to be grateful for. I do recommend The Magic because it also has a part in the book where it says that if you miss a day, you have to go back 3 days. Now, to be honest with you, it has taken me a very long time to finish The Magic because I tend to find that I get to day 15 or 16 and then I miss a day, and some days I've ended back up on day 1, which has actually been a little bit demotivating. But what I like about it is it really gives you practices that you can use in everyday scenarios. One practice I really liked, actually, and it made me smile, was it gives you an exercise where you have to go into work and you have an invisible gratitude assessor following you around all day. And this invisible gratitude assessor is going to keep a list of every time you're thankful for something at work. It's going to write it down, but every time you come across something that isn't so great, it's going to write it down. And at the end of the day, the invisible gratitude assessor makes a decision on how grateful you have been. And if you have given more positive thoughts than negative thoughts, then you pass. And I actually found it to be a really good activity. It really got me conscious of the amount of times that sometimes I might let little things in the day annoy me, and it can send you off on a tangent. Now, the law of attraction is not something that is necessarily easy. If you're someone that isn't necessarily a positive thinker, or you always see the glass half full rather than half empty, or sorry, the other way around, half empty rather than half full, it can be difficult. But if you're going to change your life and actually manifest what you want, then it isn't always going to be easy. You do have to make big changes, and it might be you've got people in your life that are bringing you down and are mood hoovers and are sucking the life out of you. And if you've got those kind of people in your life and they're maybe not conducive to where you want to be, then it might be worth thinking, do I want to keep some distance from some people? I think that the people that we have around us really do mirror where we're going to go in life. And I've actually found myself, as I've built up my company, and my company as of current day is a national business with a multi-million pound turnover. And I've realised that a lot of the people from the past have kind of dropped away as I've gone along on this journey. So, like I said, first step is being grateful. Then you need to actually think about what it is that you really want to manifest into your life. I really love vision boards. Now, a vision board, I actually have one on my fridge. So every few months, I will create a Word document with pictures. I'm very visual. I love pictures. And I will put on there things that I want to manifest. And the reason I love it on the fridge is we all go into the fridge how many times a day? And every time I go on, my fridge is almost like everything that I'm trying to achieve, everything that I'm trying to manifest, things that I'm trying to keep in my mind, whether it be affirmations, they live on the front of my fridge, and that really seems to work well for me. There was a stage where it was on the front door, but I'd be in such a rush in the morning to get out the front door, I wouldn't be stopping to be grateful. Normally, when I'm going into the fridge, it's a bit more of a leisurely activity. So vision boards work really well, and what I also love about them is it allows you to see that once you've manifested something, it's really good. You can actually see that it's working. Sometimes what I say to people, the biggest thing that I find hard about the law of attraction is self-limiting beliefs. And I want to talk about these because they get in the way for me. Even one of the biggest self-limiting beliefs that I seem to have is because of some of the trauma that I've had in the past from relationships. I've really struggled to manifest someone romantic into my life because I've got these traumas and these self-limiting beliefs for one reason or another that it's not going to happen. And a self-limiting belief could be anything from hearing yourself say, I'm not ready, I don't have enough experience, I'm not good enough, I don't have time, I can't, I will be judged. And it could be anything. It could be a job, a promotion. But, you know, one thing I've heard a lot through my life is people saying, I've missed the boat. And I've heard wannabe entrepreneurs complain that somebody's already built that. Somebody's already doing that. But have you ever considered the fact that someone else is making money off something that there's actually evidence that you should start a business and compete with them? I think children display the absolute best of when you look at a child, for instance, they go into the world believing anything is possible. Children don't tend to question in the way that adults do. I think what happens to us as adults is as we go through our life, we get experiences, we get doubt, we get traumas, we get challenges, and we become quite cynical in what's possible and what's not. Children really do live in a state of awe, amazement, all the world around them. And I think by sometimes discovering that inner child within you, you can sort of get to the nitty-gritty of some of these self-limiting beliefs. We all have them, and self-limiting beliefs are the ones which really have the greatest potential for impacting negatively upon you achieving your full potential. So we do develop these limiting beliefs to protect us from future pain. It's a primitive instinct that, you know, we years ago when we was all walking around hundreds of years ago, we would have to have this built in, you know, because might be a saber-toothed tiger running at us. There was a story I heard years ago, and I can't remember where I heard it from, and I think this kind of describes things really well. The story is about a baby elephant that is tied to a fence post. And as the baby elephant tugs and pulls, it fails to break the fence or break the rope. And eventually it gives up and makes peace with its fate. The baby elephant is stuck. But eventually the elephant grows up and becomes a big adult elephant with massive legs and a huge tusk and a swirly trunk. And it could easily walk away from the fence if it wanted to. But believing the fence is some sort of immovable thing, the adult elephant remains tied to it, believing it can never get away. I think whatever we believe and whatever vibration we send out to the universe becomes our reality. We have known this for a long time, and of course it was the outlook which prompted Henry Ford's quotation, "If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." And I'm a firm believer that you are in the director's seat of your own life and how it unfolds. But it's really down to you. What you believe in and what you put out to the universe will manifest. Limiting beliefs typically come in one of three flavors I've found. It's either limiting beliefs about yourself that make you feel like you can't do something because something is inherently wrong with you. Number two, limiting beliefs about the world that make you feel you can't do something because no one will let you. Or three, limiting beliefs about life that make you feel you can't do something because it's too difficult. The reason why I'm talking through self-limiting beliefs so much is they are the number one thing that stops people from manifesting. So how to deal with a self-limiting belief? First of all, you need to identify it. That's the first step of overcoming a self-limiting belief, is to identify it. Start by paying attention to your inner dialogue, so the chatter in your mind and the thoughts that arise when you consider pursuing a goal or making a change. Look for these kind of red flag ways of thinking. Things such as, I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed, I'm too old to start. These are often really good clues that you're dealing with a self-limiting belief. Now, once you've identified these beliefs, what can we start doing to dismantle them? The process of overcoming self-limiting beliefs can be challenging. And I know that because I'm still battling some self-limiting beliefs myself. And sometimes I think I've dealt with one and then it rears its head again and I start getting those I'm not good enough, I'll not succeed type thoughts in my mind. It really is something that you need to keep working on. So the first step really is awareness. Acknowledge the belief and the impact on your life. I sometimes think writing these down is a really good thing because I keep, for instance, a soul journal. And the soul journal really seems to work for me in terms of writing my thoughts down and everything such as that. It was actually advice that I was given by a medium friend of mine called Sarah Deverell, who's actually on the very next episode. So I'm sure she's going to talk all about that. Step number 2 is to question. Challenge the belief's validity. Is it based on facts or is it based on assumptions? Now, this works really well for me. Sometimes when I'm going down a rabbit hole of worrying or self-limiting beliefs, I will draw literally on my notepad or my soul journal and I will put down facts and then I will put down perhaps assumptions or things that my mind is jumping to. And then I will weigh it up. Am I actually worrying about something that's real right now? Or am I worrying about a hypothetical situation of the future? A lot of these self-limiting beliefs are worries about things that haven't even happened yet. So it's really good to get things down on paper, get your thoughts down on paper to challenge, is the belief that you've got actually valid? Now, step number 3 is to replace. Replace the negative belief with a positive affirmation. I love positive affirmations and they're something that even I need to start using more often because they really do work. For example, if you believe you're not good enough, tell yourself, I'm capable and I'm worthy. If you feel that you're not going to find a partner, perhaps tell yourself, I am lovable, I am enough. And sometimes I stand in my bedroom in the morning, brushing my teeth, and I used to do this actually loads. I forgot to say this earlier on. When I was in those early recruitment days, trying to build my way, I would stand in front of the mirror and I would say to myself, I'm going to be the best recruitment consultant. I am going to be the best on the London desk. I am going to make loads of money. And actually, it would do something in the morning. It would put me into a positive frequency that would really set me up for the day. What I sometimes have done in the past that has worked really well for me is I will record a series of positive affirmations and I will play them back to myself through headphones. You can use voice memos on your phone. Don't get me wrong, it can be uncomfortable at first to listen back to your own voice, but if it is uncomfortable listening back to your own voice, then ask yourself, why is that? Why would my own voice be uncomfortable to listen to? Remember, this is a journey of self-discovery, and at times it is going to make you feel uncomfortable, but it's essential to move forward to do that. So affirmations, I can't endorse them enough. I do think they're really good, and if you've got a self-limiting belief, get an affirmation that really programs your mind against that. You can also go onto YouTube, and there is common kind of problems that people have got or self-limiting beliefs that people have got. You can actually listen to tracks where it will be a meditation where it will tell you affirmations, and you can even make these yourself in time. I've made meditations in the past which will have nice music on in the background, and there'll be affirmations which are telling me the things that I need to work on myself. Step number 4, take action. Act in alignment with your new belief to take small steps towards your goals. Now, what does that really mean, take action? One example that springs to mind is supposing that you want to bring a partner into your life and your wardrobe is absolutely overloaded with clothes and whatever. Take action to maybe clear out half of the wardrobe. Put it out there that someone is going to come into your life. It might be that you've got an idea about a business. Take action, start doing things that are aligning with where you want to be. And number 5 is seek support. If you really are struggling with a self-limiting belief, then there is a range of therapies out there. I've tried CBT myself, which is compulsive behavioural therapy, because I had general anxiety disorder, commonly known as GAD. Very nice. It sounds like a car part, doesn't it? But what CBT does is, and it's a really good therapy. It goes on over about a period of 6 months, and it works on what is the root of the anxiety or the belief that you have. And what it sort of goes through a process of what I remember of the therapy. And one thing that really stuck with me is when I have a worry that comes into my mind, the first thing that I do when I have a worry or an anxiety is I ask myself a question. I say to myself, is this something that's happening right now? Is this a real worry? Or am I worrying about something that in the future that hasn't even happened yet? And what I've tended to find is most worries or anxieties are about the future. They're about this could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen. It's about things that haven't even happened yet. So I kind of go down, and actually one thing I use is a worry tree. So the first thing I'll do when I have a worry is I'll ask myself, is it real or is it hypothetical? If it's not real and it's hypothetical, then quite simply, I will do something that distracts me to take me away from that worry. Now, it does take time. Sometimes you can get thoughts which are so overpowering that you can't not pay attention to them. And trust me, I do at times still have them now. I'll go down a rabbit hole where my mind is controlling me and I'm not controlling my mind. But really good things that can stop you from going down these rabbit holes is activities like Sudoku, crosswords, things that make your brain engage. It's impossible, for instance, to do Sudoku or a crossword and to still be thinking about a worry, because your brain doesn't allow you to do those two things. And music is another really good one as well. So when I go down the worry tree, if the problem is a real problem, the first question I ask myself, does it need my immediate attention right now? If it doesn't require my immediate attention in the present moment, I will then schedule to deal with it another time and again divert my attention. If it needs attention right then, I will give it attention right then. But this is about trying to take control of your thoughts, let you control your mind and not let your mind control you. When it comes to the law of attraction, sometimes I think when you're first starting out on the journey, it's good to focus on small things, because if you're thinking about, right, I want to go and have £50,000 land in my bank account tomorrow, you'll have in the back of your mind that that's not really likely or possible, and that alone is enough to stop you manifesting it. A typical example could be you could picture in your mind that you're going to have a certain type of feather land in your hand. It's much more easier for you to believe that that's possible than to start off with big things. So what I would say, if you're on the beginning of this journey, start small. Start with something that maybe seems likely that you could get behind, that you could fully believe in, because that's the first key. I think when you're first starting out and you're perhaps dubious, of course we're dubious, you know, when we first start out with this and someone says you can get whatever you want in life and that's possible, you will be dubious. Of course you will, because we live in a world that is sometimes very cynical. So start with something small, I would say, and then go from there. And once you've seen that it works, then start to think big. Now, the last piece of advice I want to give you when it comes to the law of attraction is about feeling. Feeling is like literally supercharging this process. You need to engage all of your 5 senses. So I'm going to talk about what I mean with that. When you engage all of your 5 senses in your manifestation process, it deepens the connection between your desires and your subconscious mind. When you activate your senses, you create a more vivid and immersive experience in your mind, and this sends a truly powerful signal to your subconscious that what you desire is not just a distant dream, but it's actually a tangible reality. So let me give you an example of how this sensory engagement actually works in practice. So let's say you want to manifest a dream vacation to a tropical paradise. So close your eyes and imagine yourself on a white sandy beach. Feel the warm sun on your skin, the soft sand between your toes. Hear the gentle rustle of the palm leaves in the breeze. Taste the salty ocean air and even smell the tropical flowers nearby. Engaging all of your senses in this way makes your visualization more real and compelling to your subconscious. So when you create these multi-sensory experiences in your mind, it really does boost and help the process. And I know that works because I do it myself all the time. And back to the beginning of this story, that's really what I did when I was in those days of wanting that job at Virgin. So there we go. I really hope my story has helped you, because what I want you to take from this is, if you're in a bad place in your life at the moment and things aren't going well, it is possible to turn the pendulum the other way and to manifest the life that you want. And I know that better than anyone. I've gone from a place where, as you've heard in the story, I was at rock bottom to building up a big company. So I really hope my advice helps. And as I said earlier, I really think a good place to start is by if you're someone that wants to work through this, is by getting a copy of The Magic. It really helped me, and every time I feel like I'm going a bit wonky with the law of attraction, it's always where I go back to first of all. Now, in the next episode of Soul Sync, we're going to be joined by Sarah Deverell. Now, Sarah's a good friend of mine, and she is an excellent teacher. She's also someone that's really helped me on my spiritual journey. So you're in for a real treat there. Sarah's also going to be taking us on a guided meditation to help us sit in the power. She'll explain all about what that is on the next episode. She's a spiritual medium, a Reiki master healer and teacher. And Sarah's life really is an intricate tapestry woven with transformative experiences, daily meditative practices, and an unwavering commitment to spiritual development. She's had 15 years of being on a quest, following her calling to work in the spiritual world. Now, she's not just a passive observer, she is a dedicated seeker, and she's also been trained by some of the world's very best mediums. Sarah's story really is a symphony of spirit, a tale of growth, connection, and profound experiences. So I look forward to her joining us on the next episode. A big thank you for joining me on another enlightening episode of Soul Sync. For more spiritual insights, free meditation downloads, my thoughts, also my personal book recommendations, and of course the latest updates about Soul Sync, subscribe to my newsletter at jasonpaulmedium.com. Just head straight to the bottom of the page and sign up to stay connected with the soulful community I'm building. If you have suggestions for a future episode, or a guest you'd love to see featured, or if you have a story you'd like to share with our wonderful audience, simply email me at hello@jasonpaulmedium.com. Your stories and ideas really are the heartbeat of Soul Sync, and your input is invaluable in shaping the soulful conversations we bring to you. I'm Jason Paul. This is the Soul Sync. Until next time, goodbye.